Hello, my name is Ruben Shoup. I am the YA horror author of Vampire Jews. Today we are reading Haunted, Fear Street number 7. And this is actually part 7. So, what has happened so far? Melissa is being terrorized by a ghost named Paul. And he says that he is going to kill her. Oh my goodness. And she goes to a dance. And recently she went to a dance club. And she sees Paul. She thinks it's the ghost. But it is Paul. At the present. The Paul she sees is from the future. Now, Paul, the ghost, tries to communicate with Paul in the present. But things are not going so well because Paul can't hear him, can't see him, can't do anything. So, let us read Haunted, Fear Street number 7. This is part 7. Don't be afraid. Paul finished buttoning his jacket, turned, and headed out the kitchen door. Can you hear me? The ghost called, following behind him. Paul quickly walked back to his room, picked up a hairbrush from the dresser top, and tilting his head to the side, began brushing his hair straight back, staring at himself in a rectangular mirror above the dresser. Turn around, the ghost yelled. You've got to hear me. You've got to. Whistling to himself, Paul tilted his head back the other way and continued to brush his hair. Desperately, the ghost stepped forward and grabbed at the hairbrush, but his hand went straight through it. Paul's quick brushstrokes weren't interrupted. Please, turn around. Can't you hear me? There was no answer. Paul didn't see or hear him, or even sense a presence in the room. The ghost concentrated his energy, tried harder to appear. Paul turned off the lamp and headed down the long hall, then out the front door. Would he run into Melissa on the stoop? The ghost wondered. He flowed through the front wall of the house. Paul was already down the steps and jogging toward Davis Street. Melissa was nowhere to be seen. Paul entered Aldo's, the liquor store on the corner. A minute later, he came out carrying a brown paper bag. Walking jauntily, he headed out to the parking lot. At the side of the store, Hey, Kenny, Frankie, what are you bozos doing here? His buddies talking under the silver light of a low street lamp in front of the parking lot interrupted their conversation and came hurrying up to him. You got beer? Frankie asked, grabbing at the brown paper bag. Not for you, Paul told him, swinging the bag out of his reach. Beer makes you drool. So? Where's your rich girlfriend, Kenny? A skinny guy with a serious acne problem asked Paul. Paul flashed him a dirty look. Who? That rich girl, with all the hair. Frankie and Kenny both burst into a high-pitched laughter and slapped each other hard a high five. You've been giving her what she wants, Kenny asked, leering. Frankie made another unsuccessful grab for the beer. I can have her any time I want, Paul bragged. Tapping himself on the chest, his two friends laughed again. Then, how come she came to see me? Frankie asked, grinning. This morning, at the supermarket. That's why she was at the supermarket, Paul glared at Frankie suspiciously. What'd she want? My bod, I guess. Frankie and Kenny exchanged high fives again. Right, Paul said sarcastically. What'd she want? Give me a beer and I'll tell you, Frankie said. Me too, Kenny asked quickly, reaching out his hand. Tell me or you'll be eating the cans, Paul said menacingly. The grins faded from their faces. It was obvious that they were afraid of him. She came to ask me about you, Frankie admitted. What'd she want to know? Paul demanded. Hey, you guys, a man's voice called from the street. Get moving. Don't hang around here. They looked up to see a policeman's head poking out of a black and white cruiser. "We were just going, officer," Paul said politely, hiding the bag containing the six-pack between his jacket. They piled into Kenny's old Chevy Malibu, parked on the edge of the lot. The ghost Paul followed, wondering how to reach the live Paul, how to give him a sign. But he sank deeper in despair, feeling that he was destined to fail. "Where are we going?" Paul asked, seated beside his ghost in the back seat. "We can't go anywhere." "We've got no money," Frankie said. "Well, there are ways to get money," Paul said, grinning. More memories came rushing back to the silent ghost at Paul's side. Night memories. Memories of fear, of the blood pumping at his temples, of scrambling through windows, of desperate dark searches, of grabbing and should have been his. "You really break into houses?" Frankie asked, turning around in the passenger seat to look at Paul. Paul nodded, swallowing a mouthful of beer. "No big deal." "All those houses on Fear Street?" Kenny asked, more than a little awe in his voice. "All those stories in the paper? They're really about you?" "I said there are ways to get money," Paul said smugly. "They're calling you the Fear Street Prowler." Kenny said, "You're famous." "I don't care about that," Paul replied quietly, staring out the window as the dark houses and trees whirred by. Paul's words jarred more memories for the ghost. Yes, of course. How could he have forgotten? He, Paul, was the Fear Street Prowler. But now he had to stop Paul. He had to keep him away from Fear Street. But how? Everything went white. He was leaving them, leaving the car, drifting into the blank world where he spent so much of his time. Struggling to stay with his live self, the ghost faded, ceased to exist. When he returned, it was some time later. The car was parked by the side of the road. Where were they? The ghost could see a tilted street sign up ahead, Fear Street. He floated over the lawn. As Paul made his way around the side of the rambling old house, keeping against the wall, tight in the shadows, he was about to break into a house. "No," thought the ghost. "No, I've got to stop this. These break-ins will lead to his death, to my death. But what can I do?" In the dark, he saw a rake tilted against a house, a few feet from where Paul stood. I lifted the rake. He thought, "I'll swing the rake. If I can frighten him, maybe he won't break into the house." Since fading into the blank white world, he felt stronger. Strong enough to lift the rake. He drifted toward it, summoned his energy, wrapped himself around the handle, and tugged. Yes, he was moving it. Finally, he thought, finally I can get through to Paul. He pulled the rake away from the wall, raised it in the air, and saw that he was too late. Paul had already lifted himself up to the window ledge and was slipping inside the dark house. Too late. The Fear Street Prowler was about to strike again. The ghost let the rake fall to the ground. Suddenly, feeling powerless and defeated, when the woman's scream shattered the silence of the night air, he didn't move. A second scream, the sound of shattering glass, and Paul came barreling out the window, rolling as he hit the ground on his feet in seconds, running along the hedge toward the street. The woman's screams continued. "Help! Help me! Please, somebody, help me!" The ghost watched Paul run to the car and pull the back door open. Then, as Paul dived into the back seat, the old Malibu roared away, its lights off, the back door still open. The screaming stopped. Lights came on, and all over the house. The ghost didn't move. He floated there somewhere between this world and another, his mind in turmoil, feeling so light, so invisible, so helpless, so lifeless. "Where'd you go?" the ghost asked. Melissa cried out. "You scared me. She had just washed her hair and had a green bath towel wrapped turban style around her head. She wore a pair of blue cotton bathrobe over her pajamas. Sorry, the ghost said softly, staring out the bedroom window. I couldn't wait for you. It was too creepy there, Melissa said apologetically. She sat down on the edge of the bed, tucking her legs beneath her. It's where I grew up, he said bitterly. Please don't be angry, she said. I spent my whole life angry, the ghost said. The darkness from outside the window seemed to seep into him until he was all shadows. Being poor can make you angry. It can make you do all kinds of things. Are you going to start putting me down again for being rich? She asked wearily. No. The shadows darkened. His voice grew even softer, more distant. I saw you that day at the mall. I saw you get angry at your friend for making fun of that girl who was poor. I know you're different. He stopped. The room was silent for a long while. But what difference does it make? He moaned. What happened after I left? Could he see you? Did you talk to him? No, the ghost explained. There was no way. I can't change anything. I'm going to be killed again. No, I won't kill him. I won't kill you, Melissa cried. You won't be able to help it, Paul said barely. Then I'll go talk to him, Melissa said impulsively, playing with the silver pendant around her neck. What? No, that's impossible, Paul declared, shaking his head. No, you'll get hurt. I'll go tell him to stay away from Fear Street. I'm not invisible. He'll listen to me. Why should he listen to you? I'll reason with him. Don't be stupid. Melissa looked hurt. I'm not being stupid. I'm trying to help. You couldn't get through to him, so who else is there to try? Only me. I think I want to go see him. No way. You're doing this for me, the ghost suddenly sounded truly moved. Melissa flushed and looked away. Well, yes, but I'm also doing it for me. I'm just so frightened that you might be right. I'm so frightened that I can't breathe. I don't want to kill anyone. I don't want your insane story to come true. If there's anything I can do to stop that from happening, I'll do it. The ghost started to fade. Now he was just a dark wisp of smoke, a thin shadow against the bedroom wall. Forget it. We can't change anything, he said, sadly, and then vanished completely. Ooh. So, what do you think is going to happen next? We are on chapter 18. And just a little break here. I am the YA horror author of Vampire Juice. It's a horror mystery adventure with vampires, teen romance that is spooky and creepy, like Fear Street. And here's a quick review from Amazon. I saw the author post this on TikTok, so I decided to read it. If your child's into horror, then this is definitely a good book. It's step below Goosebumps and Fear Street, so it's a good introduction into those series. Language is simple and easy to follow. It's not very complicated. He uses short sentences to help ease the reading. I really believe that kids will enjoy it. All right, now let's get back to Fear Street number 18. No, I can't tonight, buddy. I was just on my way out the door. It was the next night. Melissa was preparing to drive to Paul's. She adjusted the phone on her shoulder as she attempted to brush her hair, which had decided to pop up on both sides, like two airplane wings. No, I really can't, she said, trying not to sound annoyed. Why did Buddy have to sound so concerned about her every time they spoke? They couldn't have a normal conversation anymore. My goodness. all these interruptions. They couldn't have. All he did was worry about her and ask questions to find out if she was back to normal, if she had stopped seeing ghosts. It was all so annoying. Who couldn't he? Why couldn't he just believe her? Maybe we can go out tonight. Tomorrow night, she said. Call me at Della's. I'll be staying there while my parents are in Las Vegas. I really have to go now. And she hung up the phone. She stared at herself in the mirror. The 2 wings of hair had drooped a little, but they still wouldn't lie flat. Maybe I'm crazy, she thought, driving off past the old village to that horrible neighborhood to see that creep. He's just going to tease me and say that I'm coming onto him again, and it's going to be very unpleasant. But if he doesn't listen to me, is it possible that I really am going to kill him? No, no way. No way. I'm going to kill anyone, not Paul, not anymore. No matter how many times she assured herself. There was still a lingering doubt in her mind, and the only way to get rid of that doubt was to talk to Paul. Melissa parked the car in front of a fire hydrant, locked it, climbed the steps up to Paul's front door. It was cool, crisp night, almost cold, a preview of autumn nights to come. Somewhere down the block, she could hear the steady thud of a basketball bouncing off the pavement, and the excitement shouts of a playground basketball game in progress. She looked for a doorbell, but not finding one, knocked loudly, louder than she had intended. "Steady, girl," she told herself, glancing nervously down the block. She pulled down the sleeves of the shady side-high sweatshirt she was wearing over the straight-legged jeans. She knocked again and waited. The house was dark. He isn't home, she thought, both disappointed and relieved. What would I say to him anyway? She had tried to rehearse in the car, but hadn't been able to come up with anything that didn't sound totally stupid. She knocked again, then leaned over the side of the stoop to peer through the dust-smeared front window. No one coming. With a loud sigh, she turned and walked down the concrete stairs. She had started to unlock her car when she heard laughter at the end of the block. At first, she ignored it. She started to slide behind the wheel when she heard it again. She thought she recognized Paul's laugh from the night at the dance club. She climbed back out of the car. It was a short walk to the corner. Why not see if it's him? Walking quickly along the cracked sidewalk, she came to a small liquor store on the corner, a neon sign in the window proclaiming Aldo's. A narrow parking lot stood at the far side of the store. Illuminated by a low street lamp, 3 boys were leaning against a red Malibu in the parking lot, laughing and drinking from brown paper bags. They turned immediately when Melissa came into view and stopped laughing. The boy in the middle, sitting on the front bumper, was Paul. She stopped at the edge of the parking lot. Paul stood up, and a smile crossed his face. He recognized her. It was too late to go back to the car. "Look who's here," one of the other boys declared, putting his paper bag down on the front fender. Melissa recognized Frankie, the boy from the supermarket. She didn't know the third boy, the one with the bad skin. "You following me?" Paul called to her, straightening his dark hair. The other 2 boys laughed. "No way, man. She came to see me," Frankie said, punching Paul on the shoulder. Paul swung around angrily and glared at Frankie. Frankie backed away. "Just kidding, man. Chill out. Okay?" Paul swayed unsteadily as he walked toward Melissa. She realized he must have had a lot to drink already. "I wanted to talk to you," she said staying on the sidewalk near the street lamps, not going any closer. She wants you, Paul, the other boys said. She wants what you've got, man, Frankie added. The two boys laughed and banged their open hands on the car. Paul ignored them and kept walking slowly, unsteadily toward Melissa. He had an odd expression on his face, almost challenging expression. Melissa stood her ground and determined to say what she had to say, determined not to be frightened of him. He looked so much like his ghost, she thought. A crazy thought. He looked like his ghost, but without the tenderness in his eyes, without the boyishness. Hey, he said, stopping a few inches in front of her. The light from the street lamp reflected in his dark eyes and made him look pale, almost ghost-like. You didn't answer my questions. You following me? I told you. I wanted to talk to you, Melissa said impatiently. Oh, I see. He smiled. His breath smelled of beer. He held up the can in the bag and offered it to her. Want a slug? Melissa shook her head. You look like you've had a few already tonight. Why did she say that? She was so nervous. She didn't know what she was saying. Who are you, my mother? He snapped, tilting the can over his mouth. He finished the beer and then tossed the bag onto the pavement. Listen, Paul. How do you know where to find me? Paul, if you just let me. How do you know my name? How do you know where I was? What do you want anyway? He smiled, more a smirk than a smile. You don't have to answer me. You want to go somewhere quiet and have a talk? He grabbed her wrist. The two boys back in the parking lot cheered. He glanced back at them, tightening his grip on her wrist. Let's lose those guys, he said, pulling her. No, let go. He didn't let go. Hey, you came to see me, right? Yes, I have something very important to... Stop! You're hurting me, Paul. Her protest only made him laugh. No pain, no gain. He muttered and laughed as if he had made a very clever joke. Please, let go. Come on. Still holding her wrist, he pulled her close to him. You want to talk? We'll talk, Melissa. Just the two of us. He pulled her away from the parking lot, away from the street light, into the dark. No, she thought. Where is he taking me? I can't let him. I've got to get away. She pulled back, staring into his face, and froze with fear. He looked so angry, so out of control. Okay, we have time for one more chapter. All right. And for those of you who don't know, I am the YA horror author of Vampire Juice. It is a horror mystery adventure with teen romance and vampires. And we're going to do one more. Here's a quick review. When shopping for a costume for Halloween, Sean stumbles upon something called Vampire Juice. The clerk was acting real weird about it. What's so big about it? What was it anyway? To find out, he and his friend go through a dark cemetery and tunnel that was a little confusing. They definitely run into some creepy things along the way. Of course, things get even creepier with the Vampire Juice. It's a whirlwind, wild and crazy events. All right. All right. And that's what we'll do for that. All right. And continue reading. I know where you live, he said suddenly. What? Melissa wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. I found your house on Fear Street. That's what I want to talk to you about, Melissa said. You found my house, right? He was twisting her arm. She wasn't sure if he realized it or not. So I found yours. That's fair, don't you think? Melissa gave a hard tug and pulled free. Hey. He looked confused, disoriented. Melissa realized it was the effects of the beer. They were standing in front of her car now. She began to feel a little safer, a little less frightened. I want you to leave me alone, she said. He laughed. That's why you came to see me? He put his hands in his jean pocket, then took them out. He didn't seem to know what to do with them. Please don't laugh at me. I'm very serious. I want you to leave me alone. Stay away from me. Stay away from my house. It's very important. A car roared by, tires squealing. The radio blared through its windows at top volume. Paul leaned toward her. I don't get it. I really can't explain, she said. I'm just warning you. You're warning me, he exploded. Warning me? You come to my neighborhood. You follow me. You're warning me? You don't understand. It's for your own good. Just stay away from Fear Street. She knew she wasn't getting through to him. She knew all along that she was bound to sound stupid. I just want to be away from here, she thought. I just want to melt away, disappear. Don't worry. I'll wipe your feet before I come to your street, Paul said barely, staring past her. His face turned angry. He called her an ugly name, and then turned and started back toward the parking lot. Paul, listen to me, she called after him, feeling like a fool. But what could she have said? What else could she have told him? That his ghost had come to her? That his ghost was trying to keep him from getting killed? For sure, that would really make the right impression on him. He is so tanked up on beer. He probably won't even remember that I was here, she thought. The idea didn't make her feel any better. Suddenly feeling very tired, she climbed into the car and headed for home. Paul's ghost warned her that I wouldn't get through to him, she thought. He was right. The next evening, Della called just before dinner. Oh, hi, Della, Melissa said, trying to pull on a t-shirt and hold the phone at the same time. I'll be over right after dinner.
It's so fucking cold out.
I'm all packed for the weekend. I have so much to tell you about. I've been dying to. There's a slight hitch, Della interrupted. I'm still at my cousin's. I got hung up here. I won't be able to get back to Shadyside till tomorrow. You mean Melissa couldn't hide her disappointment? Think you could stay home tonight and come tomorrow? Della asked. I'm really sorry. No problem, Melissa said. But I don't think I'll tell my parents. They'll only worry. I'm really sorry, Della said, but at least we'll have tomorrow night and Saturday night. You'll be okay, won't you? Sure, Melissa told her. Besides, she thought, I won't be alone. Paul is here. Della apologized a few more times. Then Melissa said goodbye and hurried down to dinner. I'm really worried about you, Mrs. Dryden said, plucking a red thread of Melissa's white top. Dinner was over, and her parents were just about to leave for the airport. Mother, I'll be fine, really. Melissa sat down at the bottom of the stairs and watched her father struggle to close the suitcase. Pushing the side of it didn't seem to help. Finally, he sat on it and successfully managed to bring the zipper all the way around. Well, what with this Fear Street prowler still around? Do you have to bring that up? Mr. Dryden snapped, wiping his forehead with a white handkerchief. Melissa isn't even staying here. She'll be with Della. So why do you want to make her nervous? I don't, Wes, Mrs. Dryden said, searching the front closet for something. I just said I was worried. There was a story in the paper yesterday about the prowler. He broke into a house just down the block, and the woman was home and surprised him. "I really don't see the point of discussing the Fear Street Prowler now," Mr. Dryden told his wife. He buckled another suitcase and turned to Melissa. "You will remember to lock both doors, right?" "Right," Melissa said, rolling her eyes. "When are you going to Dallas? Are you packed?" her mother asked. "Yes, I'm packed." That was the truth. "I'm going over there soon after you leave." That wasn't quite the truth. "Well, we'll call you tomorrow," Mrs. Dryden said. "Mother, I'm not 10 years old, you know. I really can manage." "Where are my golf clubs?" Mr. Dryden demanded, pushing the glasses up on his nose, spinning around to survey the room. "Golf clubs?" Melissa's mother looked as if she had never heard of the words before. "Oh dear, you did say something about golf clubs, didn't you?" Mr. Dryden slapped his forehead in an exaggerated manner, sending his glasses slipping down his nose again. "Hey, I thought this was a serious convention," Melissa teased. "It is serious," he said, heading to the den closet to get his clubs, "and I intend to get in some serious golf." It took nearly half an hour to load everything into the car. Finally, they drove off, after giving Melissa a few more warnings, reminding her she should call her Aunt Kate if she had any problems, and telling her for the 1,200th time where they had written down the phone number of the hotel in Las Vegas where they'd be staying. Melissa watched them back down the drive, then giving them a final wave as her father honked the horn, she closed the front door and locked it. All alone now. Even Marta had gone to Cincinnati to see her brother for a few days, all alone except for a ghost. She felt jumpy, nervous, butterflies in her stomach. How silly. He was so quiet. That was the problem. It was much too quiet. She walked into the den and started through the stack of CDs, put one on the player. Music flooded the room, loud, pounding dance music. She danced across the floor by herself for a few seconds. She felt like dancing. Where was Buddy? They could go back to Red Heat and dance till they dropped. Then she wouldn't feel so nervous. Red Heat made her think of Paul and his friends out in the parking lot. The loud music was making her nervous. She danced over to the CD player and shut it off. What should she do? Watch TV? Maybe there was a good movie on. She picked up the remote control, clicked on the TV, and started speeding around the dial. Hey! Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. She'd seen the movie at least twice, but she started watching it again. And about half an hour later, she turned it off. There were too many commercials. Every time she started to get interested, they interrupt the film for 5 minutes. Now what? She paced back and forth in the den, but that was only making her feel more nervous. This is crazy, she thought. I'm an intelligent person. I should be able to entertain myself for one evening without going nuts. She got a Coke from the refrigerator in the kitchen, then went up to her room to read in bed. She set the Coke down on the table beside the bed and started to get undressed, then stopped. Hey, Paul, are you here? There was no reply. She walked around the room, checking to see if there was a spot of cold air. A sign of the ghost was there. Paul? Where was he? Wasn't he at all interested in what she had told Paul and what had happened the night before? Paul, are you here? Where did the ghost go when he wasn't here? Did he just fade into nothingness? Or was he always around, always watching her? Did he watch her undress? The idea was sort of exciting. Maybe he's here, watching me now. Paul? She decided to close the window, even though it was so hot. She pushed it down all the way and locked it. Outside, she saw that it was a clear night, hot and still. Nothing moved out there. not a tree leaf. It was so still, it looked unreal. Feeling strange, she took a long sip of the Coke. "I'll just go to sleep," she said aloud. She looked at the clock. It was 11:30, early, but she could probably fall asleep. She got changed into her father's old pajama shirt and slid under the covers. The bed felt warm. Too warm. She kicked the covers down to the foot of the bed and turned out the lamp. She closed her eyes and tried to relax, but it was too hot. With a loud sigh, she climbed out of bed, walked out over to the window, unlocked it, pulled it up halfway. There was no breeze at all, but at least it let a little air into the room. Back in bed, the sheets were damp from her perspiration. She punched and prodded her pillow, trying to get it right. "I can't sleep in here," she decided. She got up and without warning, without turning on a light, padded across the carpeted hall to her parents' air-conditioned room. Yawning loudly, she pulled back the bedspread and climbed under the soft, cool sheet. The bed felt big and safe. The room was dark and fragrant from her mother's perfume. She felt snug and safe as a little girl. She drifted off into a dreamless sleep. The noise woke her up. The digital clock on her father's bed table said 12:30. She sat up, confused at first, uncertain of where she was. The noise again. A scrabbling outside the side of the house. Something moved behind the window curtains. Melissa knew immediately what was happening. Someone was trying to open her parents' bedroom window. And that is where I'm going to stop today. I hope you enjoyed this. We will begin next time, which will be tomorrow morning, chapter 20. So, if you like YA horror, like Fear Street and Goosebumps, you may like Vampire Juice. My link is in the bio. And here's a short review. Oh, and it's only 99 cents till January 1st. This book sent me back to the days of Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? I felt like a kid being sucked into the world of Halloween horrors. It even came complete with a setting reminiscent of the 90s, my favorite era. I always prefer horror that is pre-smartphone age. It follows the experience Sean and She's Not My Girlfriend, Amanda, as they prepare for the upcoming holiday. The author takes the time to develop the atmosphere and the characters before the focal plot point. The discovery of the vampire juice comes into play. I appreciate his quick yet thorough setup of both both main and supporting characters' personalities. As per the age group the story is written for and the genre. It's just the right amount of detail. The fast pace of the story is never sacrificed. Bullies coming around to help in the midst of danger or horror is a favorite trope of mine, and the author executed it wonderfully. I also enjoyed the reference to The Lost Boys, my favorite vampire movie next to 30 Days of Night. There was clear inspiration drawn from the movie in Vampire Juice, but with enough originality not to feel like a copy. The difference in the targeted age of the audience also keeps it from feeling so. I have to admit that while I was correct in some of my predictions, there was also some things I didn't see coming, or rather, I thought someone else was responsible. This was a good read to get into the Halloween spirit, for sure. I was quirky and fun while maintaining the original foreboding sense we all felt from scary stories and spooky season growing up. All right. Well, thanks for joining and see you tomorrow morning.